Welcome back, Truth Seeker. I want to paint a picture of what it's like to be awake when almost everyone else is sound asleep while this whole coronavirus, global unrest agenda is taking place. And to paint this picture, we have to think of ourselves as something like a parakeet in a bird store that's never lived in the wild before. We've never lived in the wild. We're a little parakeet in a pet shop. And, you know, for all of our life, we've been fed and water's been brought to us. And, you know, life's not the greatest, but it's not the worst either because we're alive and we're eating and we have shelter. But we just live in this little cage. And it's like you start to realize as the bird, something's off. The shopkeeper's not showing up as much. You're hungrier than normal. You're thirstier than normal. Something's wrong with this whole shop life experience you've ever had. And you start to realize, like, what if the shopkeeper just never comes back in here? How am I ever going to eat again? How am I ever going to drink again? And you know, if you're a smart little birdie, you're going to start trying to figure out how to get out of that cage at that moment because you realize, like, wait a minute, I'm dependent on somebody else. I'm living in somebody else's world, and I am 100% reliant on them. And, you know, that's really not that much different than what it is for Americans when you think about the role of government in their life. You know, for all their life, there's been all these automated processes that the government's backing to make sure food's on shelves when it needs to be, to make sure, you know, roads are clear, water supplies are functioning. And, you know, most people, they'll think, well, you know, maybe right now some people actually are thinking like, well, maybe something's wrong with the shopkeeper or the government based on everything that's going on. But again, to come back to the bird shop, we're a parakeet that's always lived in the shop. We were born in the shop. Never at any point in our life were we in the wild. We weren't captured in the wild. We've just always lived in the shop. That's the only world we know. But meanwhile, in other parts of the world, there's birds that are completely free. And they actually have a higher quality of life, and they live longer. But you don't know what that world's like because you've never lived in it. You've always been in the shop. You're not one of the birds that was ever free. But again, that's the point I'm getting to. It's like, as Americans, we've lived in this world, but never in an organic world. Always a very controlled world. And you know, once upon a time, probably, you know, the last time people were close to free is probably when they lived in tribes, in nature, probably in warmer climates. And, you know, life was about taking care of your family, watching out for your friends and neighbors, making sure you have food for the day, however you got to do that. You know, making sure your roof's not leaking, the next windstorm's not going to blow it over. And, you know, not a life where you're expected to go out and generate wealth, but instead just expected to go out in the world you live in and live. You know, not collect a check so you can pay the bills, to buy things that come from somebody else, and a percentage of that goes to the shopkeeper or the government. You know what I mean? But, yeah, people, just because they're asleep and they think there's actually a virus out there, and the shopkeepers, you know, doing what they got to do to keep them safe, locked in their houses while their lives and jobs and businesses crumble away. And there's really not any great signs that there's something so terrible out there other than something that's a little bit worse than the normal flu that's taken, you know, 10, 20,000 more people than a flu season. You know what I mean? So, and again, the other thing to understand is we're in those double turn lanes. Somebody was turning into the wrong turn lane, man. But anyway, it's just, yeah, the shopkeeper, man, we got a sinister shopkeeper. They're doing this to us. They probably see some, great benefit to scam their way out of the business that they had going. Set a little fire, collect the insurance money. Again, the government looks at us no different, If they can set us all on fire and collect more insurance money, they would. That's the way the people who control this nation operate, because the people who really control this nation are big banks, big industry, and all they care about are big profits and control. So we got to do, Truth Seeker, we got to get back to the basics, the way people were supposed to live in the free world, not the controlled government world, the concrete jungle world, the consumer world, because this world is their world. We live in the world they built for us, and we've never lived outside of it. And we've always been told, even with our own education and upbringing in this system, that old world, that farmer life, that living on the land, that was for old people that weren't educated. They didn't know how great living in this system could be, as we're all seeing at this day and age, as they write headlines about how experts estimate as many people will die from suicide due to new normal as they will from coronavirus. It's like, look how sick that is. So if the experts see that this is going to kill just as many people as the virus, plus you're ruining everybody's lives by not allowing them to go back to their way of life, it's just like, the math should be easy. But again, people who are sound asleep, they don't think for themselves, and they just follow the mainstream narratives that are laid out for them. And that's why, the last month and a half of even mainstream reporting, they've been saying, oh, things were way overblown at the beginning. It's not as deadly as we thought. Oh, it's not as contagious as we thought. Oh, actually, all this time you haven't need to be wiping down everything with Clorox and all these harmful chemicals. Oh, whoops. Sorry, we didn't know that 3 months ago when they did. But, I mean, they're even putting all this stuff out in the mainstream, and I'm seeing more and more people put on masks than ever. It's like, wait a minute, are you guys paying attention to the latest information? It's not as deadly as they thought. You don't have to wipe down all your stuff anymore. It was kind of overblown. See what I mean? It's just like, you pay attention to reality. It's like, okay, they're actually putting out things that are closer to truth now. But at the same time, there's also headlines of, well, this governor thinks you should go out and wear a mask at all time, and this governor just made it mandatory. And so it's like the information doesn't matter to people. It's the instruction. It's the instruction from the news. And again, it makes sense, right? Because that's pretty much what you're taught to do in your upschool bringing, is follow instructions. Here's all the information, but ultimately just follow the teacher's rule. So if you watch an hour-long newscast about how, again, the virus isn't nearly as deadly as we thought back in March, and then at the end of that broadcast, it ends with, the governor says he definitely thinks you should be wearing your mask in the public. I guess that's the piece that commands the brain of the very well-programmed, I want to say American, but I truly think at this day and age, I mean, the television's all over the world. Same type of top-down government structure, propaganda, all over the world. It's probably the same worldwide, or at least in most places. Maybe not as bad as some others. So. Anyway, Truth Seeker, back home, back to work. Had to grab a couple groceries. I was pretty much out of everything. But, yep, back to work. And I just wanted to share that thought, because I think it explains things well. So we'll leave it there, Truth Seeker. Until next time.